Namaskar, warm greetings from DELNET New Delhi, IEEE CS Madras, ACM Chennai, and CSI Chennai, India. Distinguished luminary speaker, Dr. Brady D. Lund, Assistant Professor of Information Sciences at University of North Texas in Texas, USA. Mr. H.R. Mohan, former Vice Chairman, IEEE Madras Section. Well-known national and international library experts, including Professor Alison Senkevich, the co-chair of the SLA program on leadership and management, institutional heads, LIS professionals, computer science and IT professionals, educational administrators, faculty members, researchers, scholars, officials from the collaborating institutions, including IEEE CS Madras, ACM Chennai, and CSI Chennai, my own colleagues at DELNET New Delhi and also its coordination units at Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, ladies and gentlemen. I, Sangeeta Kaul, Director DELNET, on behalf of the organizers, extends a very warm, hearty welcome to each one of you for joining us today from different parts of India and many other countries, including Bahrain, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Botswana, Canada, Ghana, Iraq, Libya, Morocco, Nigeria, Oman, Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, UAE, and USA to today's international webinar on ChatGPT, its impact on higher education and academic libraries, which will shortly be delivered by Dr. Brady Lund. We are much grateful to each one of you for your very overwhelming response to today's international webinar, wherein we have a participation which has crossed more than 2,400 professionals from across the globe. At the very outset, we would like to express our very warm, sincere gratitude and thanks to our most esteemed speaker, Dr. Brady Lund, for his very gracious acceptance. We remain ever grateful to you for your very, very splendid support to us, which will further be strengthening the global professional collaborations. We are indeed much grateful, Dr. Lund, and you have been so gracious and very, very kind, in being so proactively accepting, our invite, and the entire community here, the LIS professionals and the entire professional community, academicians from the country and also from many of the other countries who are being there today at this platform. We express our very warm, sincere gratitude to you. I take immense pleasure in introducing our distinguished speaker, Professor Brady D. Lund, who is an assistant professor at the University of North Texas at Denton in Texas in USA. Professor Lund received his PhD in information management from Emporia State University. His research aims to understand and address important issues at the intersection of information, data, and people, and to promote ethical and responsible practices in these fields with a particular emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion and international development. The presence of each one of us here today at this global platform is a great impetus to the great work that Dr. Brady is being involved with. He also has to his credit an astonishing more than 100 articles, book chapters, and books related to these topics. Profound honor and pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Brady, and thank you so very much indeed. We can never be, thank you enough for your very kind presence with us and in sharing this platform with each one of us here today. I would now like to request Mr. H.R. Mohan to kindly deliver an opening address. Mr. H.R. Mohan, a close associate of DELNET for past years, since its very inception, more than 30 years of our association with Mr. Mohan. It's a profound privilege for me to briefly introduce him, who is a very seasoned IT professional with over 4 decades of experience in the ICT field. He has seen the growth of computing in India and has been a part of the IT community through various technical associations, such as Computer Society of India, which he headed as a national president from 2014-15, IEEE Computer Society chairman of Madras chapter from 2006 to 2015, Association of Computing Machinery, ACM, IEEE Madras section, where he headed as a vice chairman from 2013-2015, and also the IEEE ComSec. He's associated with several other associations in the fields of management, operations research, library and information sciences standards, and many others. Mr. Mohan is an alumni of India's most prestigious and recognized institution, that is IIT Chennai, and has served as an associate vice president of systems at India's national newspaper, The Hindu. And he was the one who has always been ahead of his times in bringing in bringing the digital transformation in the media, in the print media. Mr. Mohan is also a senior member of both IEEE and ACM and has received the prestigious 2017 IEEE NGA Leadership Award, and he has many more recognitions to his credit. Profound privilege now, and on behalf of DELNET, Mr. Mohan, we would like to express a very warm, sincere thanks in collaborating with DELNET and giving DELNET also a chance to collaborate in organizing today's webinar. Profound honor and privilege now in requesting you to kindly deliver the opening entrance.
Thanks, Dr. Sangeeta. Good morning, Dr. Brady, and good evening to all the participants from India who have joined this webinar series. In fact, Internet has made geography as history. It is a fact, absolute fact. On 20th February, after seeing the article on the theme of today's webinar, I simply sent a LinkedIn request to Professor Brady. Within no time, he could get connected with me. And the very next day, Dr. Sangeeta was asking whether can we have a seminar or a webinar on ChatGPT. It so happened, it's a coincidence. Immediately I said, no, I already found Dr. Brady. And Sangeeta says that, she also identified. So it's just a coincidence. And within no time, within a day, the entire program was conceived. And then, we are able to host Professor Brady in less than 3 weeks' time. Thanks for your kindness, Professor Brady, for accepting our request and to be the speaker of this today's webinar. Artificial intelligence has not a new subject. So it has been there from 1950s. But unfortunately, the developments were not so encouraging or, so dramatic.
Mr. Mohan, please unmute yourself. Mr. Mohan, please unmute.
Yeah. Can you hear?
Yes, very much, please.
Yeah. But during mid 80s, it started some developments took place as a fifth generation computing. Then subsequently during the 2000s, there had been some developments. But again, rudimentary technologies were used in artificial intelligence. But the internet and the computing power and big data science, these are the fueling factors for the growth of artificial intelligence. And now we are seeing the benefits of artificial intelligence and its impact in various fields of our day-to-day life. In fact, the artificial intelligence powered robots are going to become sentient. There is a lot of debate on this topic. And in fact, by 2045, it is expected that AI's technological singularity is going to happen. So these are all certain things that are really, mind-blogging, and then sometimes, it is fearful enough. In fact, a lot of people like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk, they all said that, artificial intelligence is going to be a destroyer of the humankind. We don't know what type of thing, is the future for us. See the same topic on chatbot. We had organized a webinar sometime during 2021. At that time, we are just trying to see how the chatbot can be written for the use in libraries. But today, we are talking in a totally different context, how the libraries are being impacted by the ChatGPT. So this is a tremendous development within a span of 1.5 years. And not only that, from the time the chatbot, this ChatGPT was released during the late November 2022. Within 3 months, the next version of the GPT has been implemented in this ChatGPT, which is tremendous amount of power. So, in fact, the impact is definitely going to be large, and as people have been telling, it is going to sort of create a lot of disruption, like internet and as well as the mobiles, the smartphones. So definitely we are very eager to listen to Professor Brady, and thanks once again, Professor, for your kindness to accept to deliver the webinar. Please go ahead and enlighten us about the ChatGPT. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohan. Before we pass the baton now to Professor Brady, this is on his behalf. Firstly, our distinguished speaker may like to know a little bit about our attendees here so that he will be able to get more better insights, the kind of attendees that we have today, as the topic is all concerning ChatGPT, and yes, with a special focus on the libraries, with a special focus on the higher learning. So he's really very keen enough to know to whom he's going to address. So well before we request Professor Brady, that we are going to launch 3 quick questions, the poll questions, and that's being launched on behalf of Professor Brady, because we are not wanting any intrusion and interventions to be there. So here goes the first question. We request each one of you, please kindly be quick enough, in coming forward and giving, your inputs about it. So the first question is getting flashed on your screens right now. And the question is, what is your current professional role? Are you a university student, a university faculty, or a professor? Are you a librarian or a systems data computer science professional, or other? You belong to the other category. As we could notice, 34% of you have voted as of now, requesting each one of you. 45% have voted. We really want each one of you come forward. Right now we have with us 577 attendees who are attending to this session online, and from all across, not only India, but also from many other countries. Please do come forward. We have crossed 59%. We really want that. It's a very special request because we have lesser time today, and we really want to give more and more time to our distinguished speaker. So it would be in fitness of things that if each one of you come forward very quickly and just let us know to which category do you belong to. Are you a university student, a faculty member, a librarian, a systems data computer science professional, or you belong to others? 68% of you have voted. At least we should cross, around 80%, just in order to get a right kind of, and we do have 2 more questions, which will be followed immediately after this. Requesting each one of you, 72% of you have voted. Please do help us out in achieving the remaining 8%, at least, and 80% of you, we should be able to know that from which particular specific areas are you coming. 73% of you have voted. May I request you? It looks like, as if this has been requesting you. At least 75% if you can make it, that would be nothing good like that. So 73% of you, remaining 2%, we are requesting you, please come forward. 74% we are able to see it. Please do kindly help us out in achieving a 75%. Yes, thank you very much. 75% of you have voted, and this is now for Professor Brady to keep a note. 10% of our attendees are the university students. 23% of our attendees are the faculty or the professors. 55% of our attendees are the library professionals. 3% of our attendees are from systems data and computer science professionals, and 9% belongs to the other categories. So if we think about in the priority, the top is the library professionals, 55%, followed by 23% the university faculty or the professors. 3%, 10% are the university students, 3% systems data, computer science professionals, and 9 others. Let me now quickly move to the second question. And the second question is now getting emerged on your screens right now that you can see. How familiar are you with ChatGPT, GPT, and large language models? Options are, I'm not familiar with them at all. I have heard of ChatGPT, but not the others. I have heard of these concepts, but do not know much about them. I have a good amount of familiarity with these concepts. Or the last one is, I'm an expert and have a lot of knowledge of these concepts. So please come forward. 33% of you have voted, which has now moved to 42%. We would truly appreciate, more faster you become, the more time we are going to give it to our luminary speaker today, and we're going to immensely getting benefited, with his more time, with us today. So 60% of you have voted. Please help us in achieving 75% threshold, at least a 75% of you to have voted. It has reached to 65%. May we request those of you who have still not opted for any of the options, please come forward and help us out. It has now moved to 68%. At least another 7% of you, 69%, please do help us. It's a very humble appeal to each one of you. Please come forward. Quickly give us your input, because after this we still have one more question that Professor Brady may like to inquire from each one of you. 72% of you have voted. May I request you, those of you who have not yet voted, help us out in seeing on the screen a 75% voting. It has now moved to 73%. Yes, still there is a scope. Still there is a scope for 74%. And let's see how quickly can you make it a 75%. Those of you, it seems as being stuck, please do help in making it 75%. It seems to have been stuck at 74%. Yeah, thank you so very much. It has now turned to 75%. And now here it comes for you, Professor Brady. Option number 1, 21%. I'm not familiar with them at all. 26% have said, I have heard of ChatGPT, but not the others. Option number 3, I have heard of these concepts, but do not know much about them. That is 35%, 36% have been opined. 15% have said, I have got a good amount of familiarity with these concepts. And yes, we have 4% who have said, I'm an expert and have got a knowledge of these. So it is now let me tell you the final one. It's a 20%, 25% the second option, 26% is the second option, 35% is the third one, 15%, and then the 4%. So the highest number have opted for option number 3, that says, I have heard of these concepts, but do not know much about them. Followed by option number 2, that I have heard of the ChatGPT, but not the others. That is the GPT and the large language models. Followed by, I'm not familiar with them at all. 20% have said so. Followed by, I have a good amount of ability with these concepts. 15% of them have opined, and 4% of our attendees here have said that yes, they are an expert and have a lot of knowledge of these concepts. Let me quickly now move to the last question that Professor Brady may like to now ask you. And the question is now getting flashed on your screens. And the question is, which of the following is most interesting to you? Implications of ChatGPT for scholarly communications and publishing. Implications of ChatGPT for education and instruction. How to work better with AI technologies like ChatGPT. What comes next? Future advances in large language models. And the last one goes, others not sure, just interested in the topic in general. 19% of you have voted. Please help us in achieving a 75% mark. So 37% of you have voted. May we request you all come forward quickly, ensuring that we are going to pass the baton, to our distinguished speaker, so that he can start off, with sharing his vast expertise, on the subject with each one of us. 58% of you have voted. May I request you? We are requesting each one of us is requesting those who have not still opted for any of the option. Come forward. It's 63% right now. Please do kindly help us. 65%, remaining 10% still have to come forward. At least 75%, voting should be there. It has now come to 67%, 68%. Please come forward quickly. We are really getting impatient because we really don't want, to stand in between you and a distinguished speaker. And we really are keen enough, to very graciously invite our speaker to start the session. 70% of you have voted, 5% more to go. Quickly, may we request you, 4% still left. It's a 71%, 72 it has now become. Those of you who have not yet voted, come forward, help us, help each other, to achieve the 75% mark. It's a 73% of you. Quickly, it's really, one can see that how each one of us, each one of you who are there today matters a lot. And your voice, what you feel about it, we really want. And that's how Professor Brady, has been really keen enough that he should firstly know to whom he is addressing to today. 74% of you have voted. It's 1% now. We really want to see this figure of 74% turning into a 75%. I think last time also we have encountered it's getting stuck at 74. Yes, thank you so very much. So here it goes, the findings for you, Professor Brady. 18% have opted for the first option, implications of ChatGPT for scholarly communications and publishing. 33% have opted for implications of ChatGPT for education and instruction. Again, 33% have gone for how to work better with AI technologies like ChatGPT. 5% have opted for what comes next, that is the futuristic trends in the technology, and 11% have said that they are, in general, they are interested in the topic. So final goes 18%. So second is the 32%, 33%, 6%, and 11%. This is because now we can see it is at 78% of you who have voted. So this is for you, Professor Brady. With immense pleasure and honor, now I would like to request you, I'm giving you requesting you to accept once again our invite to have you as our presenter. May I request you for a screen sharing. Yes, we're able to see you. And in the great honor and pleasure now in requesting our distinguished eminent speaker, Dr. Brady Lund, to kindly start his presentation. Over to you, Dr. Brady. Thank you very much.
Are you able to see my slideshow now?
Yes, perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine, yes.
Thank you very much for your great introductions. I'm really excited to be with everyone today, and thank you for completing those survey questions, those little poll questions at the beginning. That will be very helpful for me in knowing how to address you and speak about this topic. So just briefly, a little bit more about me. We've gone over this a bit already, but I'm an assistant professor of information science at the University of North Texas. And to me, being a professor of information science, I wouldn't classify myself as a data science expert. I wouldn't classify myself as a computer scientist. I am an information scientist, and to me that means whereas computer scientists, data scientists work on building algorithms, building new software and systems and those kinds of things, behind the scenes, I like to focus on these finished products. How do people interact with them? How do they affect society? How do they affect organizations? How will they affect our economy? Those kinds of things. The big questions about how are these technologies actually adopted and used by people in society. So I actually have two recent publications on this topic of ChatGPT. The first one is the one you've probably heard of through different promotional materials, chatting about ChatGPT. That was published in Library High Tech News. The second one was just published this last Friday in the Journal of the Association for Information Science and Technology. That particular publication, ChatGPT in a New Academic Reality, focuses on the implications of ChatGPT for scholarly publishing and things like plagiarism, copyright, and potential implications for things like tenure and promotion within universities. Both of these are subscription-based publications. However, if you go to my ResearchGate or you go to SSRN, there are preprints available that have all of the content from the articles, and so you should be able to find copies of these articles if you look around a little bit. But the copies of note are published by those two journals. A little bit about where I'm located. So I am a professor at the University of North Texas. The University of North Texas is in Denton, Texas. So you may be familiar with Dallas or the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's northern Texas here. Our university has about 43,000 students, which is quite large for a university in the United States. It probably puts us in the upper 10th percentile, at least, of universities by size. And we have a Department of Information Science where we have faculty who are involved in library science, information science, health informatics, and data science. So I get to work a lot with professionals in a wide variety of disciplinary areas. And so I can bring my expertise from the human side of how we interact with technology, human technology interaction, technology adoption and diffusion, And then we have a lot of great professionals who have that technical background as well. Our university has a very large international student population, especially within our department. So I'm speaking with you today, and many of you are located in India. I teach a class. I teach the introductory class for our Masters of Information Science program. I have 50 students this semester, and 48 of them are from India. So I work a lot with students from India in our program, and we have a very large international student population, particularly interested in information systems, data science, and health informatics. So that's a bit about me. This is a bit about my presentation and what I'll go over in the next few minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about what ChatGPT is, set up a background, a little technical, but not too technical. I'll start at the beginning and just want to build up some knowledge about what the technology is about. Then I'll talk about some applications of ChatGPT. So I'll talk about how it could be used to write papers, used for generating different programming scripts, coding scripts, personalized learning experiences, and adaptive testing, which is something I find quite interesting about the technology. And then I'll finally wrap up with discussing some concerns about ChatGPT, potentials for bias, how to regulate these large language models, and a top fear for a lot of people is job replacement. So I will talk about that a bit as well. So let's start by talking a little bit about what ChatGPT is. Like I said, I'm going to discuss these concepts kind of in a general overview, and if something really interests you, intrigues you, you can always research this a little bit further. Generative AI is an important concept to understand with ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT, as I'll mention in a future slide, stands for chat and then generative pre-trained transformer. So the generative in that refers to this ability through generative AI. Generative AI just means that it's an AI or an artificial intelligence technology that is able to generate new content based on patterns identified in existing data. So for instance, with ChatGPT, when you are asking it or you're providing it with a prompt, asking it to write a paragraph or an essay or something, it is not, as we do, just sitting down and writing off the top of its head, but it is taking your prompt, it is dissecting it and understanding what you're prompting it to do, and then it is referring to its pre-existing knowledge that has been developed by referring to the data set that it was trained on. And so that includes a lot of content that was retrieved from the internet, including other publications, essays, website articles, those kinds of things. So it's taking existing knowledge that it had and is using it to create new knowledge. In that sense, it is quite similar to a human brain because we learn through interacting with things over time and acquiring knowledge and then applying that into brand new contexts. An important aspect of that is it could be used to generate anything really, text, images, videos. The original version of ChatGPT, which uses GPT-3, it would generate only text, but the new version, GPT-4, will also generate images. Generally, like I mentioned, these are trained on very massive data sets. So GPT-4, I think, is 1 trillion parameters, meaning it's got massive big data sets that it is being trained on in order to fully understand language, understand aspects of images and those kinds of things in a way that it can generate brand new things based off of that prior existing data. Large language models, then, that's a specific type of AI that uses the deep learning algorithms in order to generate human-like text. And so it's kind of a sub-discipline, a sub-area within generative AI. And there's several examples of this. So GPT has become very popular because of its association with ChatGPT. But there are also many others like BERT and DELNET, and these are generally associated with companies that are well known. Microsoft has an affiliation with OpenAI, which created GPT. Google has been involved in the creation of these different models, and so there's a lot of interaction with large companies that have been involved in creating these different language models. GPT is a model that is generative, so it creates new knowledge. and it is created through the process of autonomously self-training, pre-training along a language model, and then fine-tuning it to improve the model. In other words, the algorithm behind GPT is initially provided a large set of data and told to make patterns out of it and try to identify things. Then once it has gone through that process, it is then fine-tuned, provided oversight by a human user who can essentially train it to say, this is not quite what we would be looking for, try to revise it to this, and it will learn through that experience. It's quite similar, as I mentioned here, to how we learn as human beings. So as an infant and toddler, we don't necessarily have formal instruction. We're listening to family members speak, and we're acquiring words in that way. We're learning how to speak and those kinds of things. And then once we attend primary school, we begin to have formal instruction that fine-tunes that language that we have, so we can begin to build a larger vocabulary and we can understand how these words are used in a really logical way. So GPT is actually that model that underlies it. ChatGPT is built using GPT, but it takes it another level. And so I won't go too much into that, but basically involves fine-tuning the GPT model even further. You create one GPT model, then you further validate and test it and refine it into becoming that interface that you can use with ChatGPT. So GPT-4 is a very recent development just this month. It's the 4th generation of GPT. So that's what the 4 means. It's just the 4th generation GPT. The main difference between GPT-3 and GPT-4 is GPT-4 employs multimodal neurons and a significantly larger training set. Multimodal neurons basically means that it can understand the meaning of things across multiple contexts. So we actually have multimodal neurons within our own brain that help us to understand patterns and things. So for instance, when we hear the word dog, when we see the word dog written on a piece of paper, when we see a picture of a dog and we see an actual dog standing in front of us, for instance, we can all associate all those different things, even though they're different expressions of a dog, we can associate all of them with the concept of dog. And the ability to do that helps us tremendously in being able to cross across these different contexts and accomplish certain work. And so, for instance, we can provide a prompt that says, draw a picture of a dog, and somebody can draw a picture of a dog even though we didn't show them what we wanted them to draw. For instance, they're able to associate the word with an image in their head that they're then able to replicate on a piece of paper. So this has previously been used in another OpenAI product, which was DALL-E, which you may have heard of. That was fairly popular last year, and that was only to generate images. And so you entered a prompt, and then it would generate a series of images based off that prompt. And there would sometimes be very humorous ones, and so they'd get shared on social media and those kinds of things. But again, the real value of this development in the long term, in a practical sense, beyond just look at these interesting images, is it allows a new level of comprehension across these different modalities to where you can do a lot more work with your GPT model. So finally, ChatGPT, as I mentioned, it's built upon GPT, and it's trained using huge data sets. And for GPT-4, that's about 1 trillion parameters, so about 1 trillion different data points that it's looking at. And it's been fine-tuned in order to work best in interacting with you as the user. So it's tested and it received different prompting in order to become fine-tuned. Then that's just placed on a very simplistic kind of looking interface, and it's kind of like Google. So the technology behind Google can be quite interesting and complex with different page rank algorithms and those kinds of things. But you've known the Google interface for a very long time, and it doesn't change, and it's very simplistic, and it's intentional because it wants to be easy to use. It wants to be approachable. It doesn't want all these bells and whistles that are going to distract you or confuse you. So that's what ChatGPT is in a nutshell. Now I want to discuss some applications of ChatGPT and how it can be used. I think one of the most common things that we think of right now, at least if you're an instructor, would be the use of ChatGPT to write papers or paragraphs or those kinds of things. It can certainly increase the quality of written communication substantially. In my opinion, a lot of people are very concerned about this, including a lot of my coworkers who have inquired about it. I think there are both positive and negative uses of ChatGPT to write academic papers in any kind of communications in general, really. On the one hand, if you've written something original, or you have an idea where you're kind of an expert in this area and you want to have something that's going to help you save some time in your writing, then, and you know how to interact with this type of technology, then you can prompt it in a way where it is writing original text based off your work, and it can help not replace the ideas in your mind. It's not generating new ideas. It is just helping ease the process of writing. On the other hand, if you have something you've already written and you feed it into ChatGPT and say, can you help improve my grammar? It can help with that as well. And that can be really tremendous for people for whom, for instance, English is not their primary language. That's one of the most significant barriers in scholarly communications and academia in general, is that barrier of language, because many editors of journals, many admissions officers in universities and those kinds of things, they're native primary English speakers. They speak English at home, they speak it at work. And they have a very particular type of English they speak as well. And so if that's not the case for you, and your English, you can speak English, but it's not, as perfect as those individuals might be, it can help write in that way. And I don't consider that problematic at all. I think that's a tool, just as spell check and grammar check on Microsoft Word are tools that can be used. Where it can be an issue is when somebody does not know what they're talking about at all and is just using ChatGPT to write something for them. Now, a lot of times, personally as an instructor, it's very obvious to me, but I've used ChatGPT a lot and I've identified certain patterns in how ChatGPT writes that clues me in. For instance, with this example over here, this is very common when you provide it a prompt or tell it to write a short essay on a topic. There are things that come into place because it still works in a very formulaic way, as a lot of computer programs and things work. And so you'll notice, for instance, a lot of times, almost always, something written by ChatGPT, that last sentence is going to start with overall or in conclusion. And so that alone doesn't guarantee that it's ChatGPT, but combine that with other things that stand out in ChatGPT, like compare the language that the student writes with compared to how ChatGPT writes, because it's very articulate. And so you can start to identify certain patterns in how it's writing that clue me in, at least, into when ChatGPT is being used. But it's a significant problem, and it really, in my opinion, only hurts the students, because they're going to run into a point where they're not going to be able to use ChatGPT and they're going to be in major trouble. But I think it can still be used very ethically in order to improve communications, in order to improve published writing, if it's used ethically and it's used by people who know what they're doing. And so something with AI is always that, there's room for a human role, and it's important that you still be skilled and knowledgeable in order to get the most out of these different tools. Because an essay that I can write with the assistance of ChatGPT on a given topic is going to look extremely different than the essay that a student writes. If they come not having any knowledge, they just tell ChatGPT to write an essay, it's going to be really formulaic like that. Whereas mine can be very articulate, mine can look very nicely. And also I have the knowledge where I can go back and I can revise things, I can edit things. It's just saving me time, like many tools that we work with do. ChatGPT can also write programming scripts. I'll just speak on this very quickly here, but much as with writing a paper, ChatGPT can write in Python, HTML, many programming languages, but you have to know what to tell it. You have to know how to describe what you're looking for in order for it to be able to produce the output. And so depending on who you're working with or who's working with it, you can end up with scripts that don't work at all. You still need some basic knowledge. You still need actually some quite advanced knowledge in some cases of how these languages work in order to be able to test them and make sure they work for your specific needs. But for the sake of, if you're knowledgeable about Python, for instance, and you have this major script you want to write that's 300 lines of code, it could increase that speed dramatically and help you get your work done faster. But you still need that knowledge in order to know how to use that and how to make it work. And so again, it's a tool. It's going to speed things up. It's going to make things move faster, but it doesn't replace your knowledge that you need to have when interacting with it in order to ensure the outcome, the product that you get here, is actually working for your needs or for your organization's needs. The last example I'll give here is adaptive learning and teaching. And so this is something I've looked at a little bit recently. I find quite fascinating. But this is maybe something that isn't quite something I would advise using right now with ChatGPT, but I think it's coming very soon as far as applications of these large language models in education. Adaptive learning and teaching basically means that an AI algorithm like this, like ChatGPT, could adjust learning content or testing questions based off of your prior knowledge. And so, for instance, adaptive testing, you could have a quiz that you provide to different people, and based on their answer to the first question, it could give them a question that's slightly more difficult or slightly easier. This will allow for fine-tuning and understanding students' levels of knowledge and ability. And so, for instance, you can, rather than just having a 10 question quiz and only being able to provide a score of 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, up to 100, you could fine tune that to really be able to accurately assess students' knowledge relative to one another by fine tuning the difficulty of the questions based on whether they get the prior question right or wrong. And so I think this is something that is already used in some cases, but could become even more common with applications of large language models. Additionally, it could be really helpful in educating students. And so, for instance, if I have a lesson on political theory or the political theory of democracy, for instance, and depending on where I'm going to teaching that in China versus India versus the United States, what I would want to say as an instructor is very different. And the examples I'd want to provide so that you can really understand the concepts might be different as well. And so the AI could potentially do that. It could take a lesson that I've provided that is kind of just a general lesson that I've prepared, and it could help revise it so that it would be more specific to these different students' backgrounds and interests, and so they would be able to more concretely understand the concepts as applied to their prior knowledge. That should help a lot with their learning. And so I think this is very, very soon on the horizon as far as the potential application of these large language models. I think you can likely see this coming in just a few years. Now, there are some major concerns with ChatGPT as well, and these have gotten better with GPT-4, but they're still not perfect. Bias is a major issue with any kind of algorithm, any kind of model, even if it's just something, relatively to this, fairly simplistic, like doing a regression analysis. Bias has a significant issue, and bias can occur at a lot of levels. It can occur with the training data that you provide. So I mentioned all those different trillion parameters that are used. Well, if they pick the wrong parameters, then the data could be biased and it could train the algorithm to do things the wrong way or say the wrong way. Algorithm bias, so how the algorithm is developed, who's developed it, what potential innate biases that people don't even think about themselves having, could be embedded into the actual algorithm. Confirmation bias, large language models tend to be more laudatory as opposed to negative, and so they may say, yes, this is correct, even though, or this is really well written if you ask them if something is well written, even though that might not really be the case. And then limited data, and this again ties into issues with training data and algorithmic bias. It may not be trained on all data that exists. So if there's some section of data that is missing on a certain topic, it won't know that that exists. And so it may say that that does not exist, even though it does. And so here's an example of just how you can kind of confuse ChatGPT. And so this was something I actually ran into because I was writing an article recently and I wanted to see how it would interact. And so this is just, and you could fill these words in with anything, but I'm talking about Hispanic digital immigrants. So individuals who are Hispanic or have a Hispanic heritage and who are digital immigrants. So who were born in a time before the emergence of digital technology and who have come to it a later time. But you can see when I asked it to provide a title here, it mentions the issue of challenges faced by Hispanic immigrants in the world of new technology. And so that is not actually what I was talking about in this case. It's assuming that these Hispanic individuals are immigrants, i.e. they were not born in the United States. When that's not the case, we have a lot of individuals who identify as Hispanic in the United States who were born in the United States. And so it should not assume that these individuals were immigrants, but because of these terms, how I entered them here, and its incomplete understanding of this term digital immigrants, it assumed that I was talking about the Hispanic individuals being immigrants rather than that I was talking about digital immigrants who are also Hispanic. And so these are some language issues that can still be found with ChatGPT very recently. Regulation needs, we're still currently in kind of a wild west when it comes to these models. And so we need to see how governments are going to step in and how do we want them to step in and those kinds of things. I've been doing a study recently with some PhD students looking at how people's level of concern with things like the fourth industrial revolution, which is kind of the economic and societal impacts of all these different emerging technologies right now. And it varies significantly on how people think that these issues should be handled. And so some people think that the federal government should have a very large role in regulating these companies. Others think it should be left to the state or specific region that the company is headquartered in. Some people think there should not be regulation because it limits growth within the organizations. And some people also think that not only should there not be any regulation, but government should be providing support. They should be partnering with these organizations to provide as much as possible in terms of monetary and data support in order to advance these organizations. And so as library professionals, as many of you are, you might have different opinions from people who are data science professionals, like some of the people I work with and who I teach. And so this is a major issue from a social perspective. Never mind the technical aspects and potential bias, but from a social aspect, how do we regulate these? Just as with the internet, how do we regulate the internet? It's still something that's ongoing, 30, 35 years later, that we need to answer a lot of these questions. And these technologies like ChatGPT are much more powerful than a simple static HTML website or something in terms of the threats they pose, even more dangerous than social media. And so it's something that needs to be heavily considered going forward. And then a major issue, again, referencing that study I was working on recently, a major issue with emerging AI technologies is job replacement. And interestingly, a lot of these large language models and things that are being developed now could impact white collar jobs, like being an academic, like being a librarian, just as much as they would impact blue collar jobs. And that's interesting because when you watch a lot of older shows about the future of AI, it's normally talking about how it's going to impact blue collar jobs, like factory jobs. Robots are going to replace things. And that certainly is a threat as well. It's just not a particular threat with a language model quite as much, but these language models threaten white collar jobs. They also will likely disproportionately impact the global South, minorities, and women, because they tend at this time to have less entrenched positions and fewer leadership roles. And so I think what will happen is, in a lot of cases, certain industries will not be entirely replaced by AI, but the number of roles may be more reduced, and the amount of expectations also may increase. Because if I can use ChatGPT to help me write a scholarly article, again, it's not writing the whole article for me, but it's speeding up the process by kind of writing the boring parts based off some input I provided, for instance. Well, then that means I can publish more papers. And so if I have access to ChatGPT, which now is this $20 per month subscription option, which may go up in price, if I have access to that and somebody else doesn't, then that's expanded a digital divide. It's giving me a substantial advantage that somebody else may not have. Or if one organization has a subscription to something like this and another doesn't, it gives that organization a substantial advantage. And so I still think, at least for the time being, at least for the next decade at least, there's going to be a substantial role for people to interact with this technology, to work right alongside this technology. As I've mentioned throughout this presentation, you've got to know how to interact with the technology to get it to write what you want it to write. You can't just give it a really basic prompt. However, that may mean that because the language models can speed up the productivity, it may reduce the number of faculty or the number of staff employees that need to be held within this organization. It may reduce the amount of time spent on tasks. It may reduce the amount of money that your employer will provide you. And so there are some risks still within that. I think it also does create opportunity, though, like I said, for people who stay on top of this technology, who are knowledgeable about it, who get degrees like in information science so they know how to work with this technology. It will create new jobs in that sense, because organizations are going to want to quickly adopt these technologies. People that know how to interact with them properly, as I mentioned with my example of how students would have it write an essay versus how I could have it write an essay, and it would look completely different. That goes to many of the different uses of these language models. And so people who know how to prompt ChatGPT, how to interact with it, how to personally train it to work for you in certain purposes, they're going to have a tremendous advantage. And then I think a lot of organizations will also develop specialized models. And so ChatGPT is a very broad model. It has many purposes within the realm of language models, but you could see even within like library-specific chatbots could be trained based off of a GPT model, but rather than training it on a huge number of parameters, you could train it to be really, really, really good at working with library-specific questions, questions specific to your library even. And so it becomes very tailored to being an absolute expert in that role. And so there would be a role in working with that model and training it, but it may diminish roles related to library reference, for instance. And so again, with a lot of technologies over time, this is not new. As Dr. Mahan mentioned, I believe, this is not necessarily new, AI and technology changing jobs in general. But generally, as how things have gone for a long time, when a disruptive technology is introduced, it just changes things. It doesn't necessarily mean that a large amount of jobs are going to be permanently gone, but it changes the expectations for those jobs. It changes specializations. It changes certain economic situations. And those who are able to be knowledgeable and able to be flexible and adaptable, those are the people who are going to be really successful within their organizations. And for them, it will be a very positive opportunity. But for many others, it may be a negative, it may be a drag, or not as fun because they're less hesitant or more hesitant, less open to certain changes with these technologies that are coming. In conclusion, I think these models hold a lot of great potential. They're going to be coming. It's the practical uses of these technologies have been demonstrated at a level where it's going to be really hard to stop adoption within organizations and by the large majority of the public. But I do think just as how things like Microsoft Word, open journal systems, online research databases, library systems have changed things, and learning management systems have revolutionized higher education. They have changed things dramatically in how we've worked over the last 3 decades, but they have also increased a lot of opportunities. They have also made a lot of things better for us. It might not be fun to learn about all these new technologies, but ultimately, once you have, they've made things like this right now, where I'm speaking to you from the United States, and many of you are listening from other places in the world, around the world, it's made that possible. And that's a really positive development, even though it has required this process of learning how to use this technology and all those kinds of things. So it's good to balance threats and positives of these technologies, and to prepare yourself to even look at past innovations, look at things like how people responded to the development of the internet, to the development of computers, to the telephone even, going back, centuries, how people adapted to these and what made them successful, what allowed them to capitalize on these technologies, and what gave people struggles. And that still applies a lot to what we're seeing with this fourth industrial revolution, with the impact of not only ChatGPT, but other applications of AI, blockchain, VR, that will be impacting our society, our economy, and other things going forward. These are some resources that I've provided. Two of them are the papers I mentioned. And like I said, you should be able to find those on ResearchGate or other sources if you want a free preprint version. There's also these two articles. These are on GPT-3. And so now that we're on GPT-4, they may be a bit outdated in a sense, but knowing about GPT-3, since GPT-4 is based on GPT-3, will give you a good understanding of how all this works if you are interested in learning more about GPT and ChatGPT. So thank you very much for attending my presentation. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes here where I can answer questions if you have any, and I am definitely available if you have any questions outside of the presentation as well. I'd be happy to speak with you more about this technology.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brady, for such an excellent, extraordinary talk. In a very lucid presentation, you have made everyone, whether it was a library professional or an academician or an IT computer expert or a simple student, being there, everyone has got truly benefited. You have really made the complex things so easier, and that speaks volumes of the vast expertise that you hold. So right from the GPT-3, GPT-4, you have been the one who have been, really made it possible for us to understand the concept and also to know what the future holds, for us, how the technology is moving, and what really also, as you have mentioned, the white collar jobs, and also and we can see that, while you were talking, it's being quite visible, the interest that you had generated in the presentation while you were talking about it. There were questions which were coming into the frame. Like, we had our attendees who were just posting the questions because it was something that they were finding it so relevant, in the specific areas that we are working in. We would like to request all our attendees, thank you so very much, Dr. Brady, because of paucity of time, we would really like to request our attendees, please post your questions in the chat box, and we would like to pick up the questions from there rather than getting connected in the online mode through the audio. I would come to Mr. Mohan, to you for any questions that you may like to ask Dr. Brady. But yes, firstly, we would just quickly would like to take a couple of questions which are being posted by our attendees here. And the first one I would like to take, this is from Mr. Bogais Saropola. He is from, I believe, from not from India. He has joined us from some other part. I don't have the entire list, but I could see that he is representing, outside India, our global community, who is there with us. And his question, to read, it says that, do you think that ChatGPT will affect how students they think? How can colleges and universities detect that a student has used AI or ChatGPT to write his or her assignment? Quite a very important and an ethical question, in academics. So what would you like to say about it, Dr. Brady?
Yeah, so this is a major concern within my university as well, and several faculty members have been having a lot of discussions about this, and there isn't a perfect answer. As I mentioned, I have gotten pretty good just by using ChatGPT to learn certain patterns of how it writes, but that's only assuming that the students don't have a lot of knowledge about the topic and don't have a lot of knowledge about ChatGPT works. If they just enter a simple prompt, I can see a lot of patterns in how ChatGPT writes. That gives me a clue. But if they actually revise some things, then it can make it very hard to identify. Now, there are classifiers, actually. OpenAI, if you search OpenAI, they have a ChatGPT classifier which you can provide text. I think it has to be at least 1,000 characters or 1,000 words, and it will tell you how likely it is that that was computer generated. And so that is helpful. It's a free tool. It's helpful. It's not perfect, because it usually says this is likely computer generated. It can't be 100% sure that it was computer generated. And so it makes for a very difficult decision. I think having essentially a zero tolerance policy, meaning if we were to identify it, then that's going to be a very, very significant infraction, can help dissuade people. Also, as an instructor, I just try to stress the importance, and I try to write my own assignments in a way that it wouldn't be really easy for ChatGPT to do it for them. And so I asked them to write a lot of personal reflections where they're talking about their thoughts and their feelings about certain topics, and ChatGPT can't access their thoughts and feelings. So stuff like that is helpful. And then just stressing, as an academic, and this is just my personal feeling, my personal inclination, but as an academic, I tend to say, you're really only hurting yourself because you're going to really need this knowledge as a professional. You're going to need this experience, and not that dissuades everyone, but it does dissuade some students who are good students, but otherwise might just out of laziness. But if you can convince them at least that, this is really important to them, it does help a bit. But there is not a perfect answer, at least at this time, on how you can identify 100% this person used ChatGPT and then you can, deal with that infraction. But there's a variety of different strategies that I think can help at least.
Dr. Brady, thank you so much. This is one more related question I can see we'll quickly do, because we can see that already, it's in 1 hour and you may also have to head for work. All our Indian colleagues are back at their homes, but you have to head for the work, now after finishing the talk. So we won't really want to take much of your time, 5 minutes more, and we'll just quickly would like to take a question, one of them, which is again a related one from Terence Rodrigues, who wants to ask you that how can plagiarism be detected if ChatGPT is used? Are there any softwares that can detect plagiarized content if it's taken from ChatGPT?
Yeah, so my university, so there's the tool that I mentioned, the OpenAI, they have ChatGPT classifier. So if you look for that, that's free software you can use, unlimited, and it will classify. It'll tell you, like, it's very likely that this text came from ChatGPT. And so that can be helpful. You could say then, it's classified as very likely, so at least you need to rewrite it, is something I've done before. There are promises. I haven't seen a finalized one that works really well yet, but there are promises from different companies that they're working on a solution. So my university uses Turnitin, which I believe is a subscription-based product, but they have promised that by the end of this semester, at least, that they're going to have a way to identify quite positively if a language model has been used. It also provides a plagiarism detection. That's what Turnitin is used for primarily. And so it can identify parts that are plagiarized. And normally what that looks like in the few examples I've seen is you have a paragraph and it's all lit up as potentially plagiarized, but it's got like 10 different sources because it's taking a few words from here, a few words from here, a few words from here. So whereas normally you see plagiarism, it'll be like full sentences or two from another source. It might be a few sentences from a source, a few sentences from another source. So it looks different, but you can still see that there's something wrong here where this likely has not been written by a student. And so those tools can help tremendously, but there's not a perfect solution yet. And that's true of a lot of innovations when they first are unveiled, as I've mentioned, that at first the technology evolves faster than the actual solutions or the ethical or the regulatory aspects related to the technology. And so it does become a Wild West at first, and then solutions come. So I think maybe by the time that fall semesters are starting for a lot of universities, there may be much more solid solutions, but it is a real challenge, at least for these intervening months as we try to figure out how to handle this issue.
Dr. Brady, two quick questions, because I could see, and firstly, our apologies to all our attendees here. It's not visible. We could see that the entire, the chat box is being flooded with the questions. Because of paucity of time, it's not really visible enough, but we would still like to, pass on as an email to Dr. Brady to, tell him that what is the extent of the interest got generated out of your outstanding talk here today. And just two quick questions. One coming in from Professor Subrata Chakravarti, the former director of the most prestigious management institution in the country, IIM Lucknow. And his question to you is, Dr. Brady, the question is, the ChatGPT does not understand the content it produces. Does that not affect the utility of the content? And the second question, back to back, because of paucity of time, back to back, the second question coming in from Professor Lakshman Raoji, who is wanting to know, what is your advice, to the librarians to survive in this era of AI? These two questions, and then, I will pass on to Mr. Mohan to give the, concluding remarks. It's over to you, Professor Brady. Firstly, is ChatGPT does not understand the content it produces. Does that not affect the utility of the content? From Professor Subrata Chakravarti. It's a very, very learned scholar and a great academician.
Yes, it certainly is a major issue, and it makes me think of an experience that one of my students, who was a library student and works in a library, had that she mentioned to me, which is where she had a student come to her and say, my professor asked where I found all these references I included in my paper, and I cannot find them now. And she started to look for these references, and they did not exist. And finally, the student admitted that they had used ChatGPT. Well, ChatGPT had created phantom citations. It doesn't understand what it's doing, and it's very sure of itself that these resources exist until you asked it directly, does this resource exist? And then it says, oh, sorry, this does not exist. So an entire paper that has been filled with made up in-text citations, it just knows that's how a paper is written, and it knows that it needs citations if you tell it to write a scholarly paper, so it puts citations in there, but it doesn't have enough knowledge of the literature to actually fill that with relevant citations or actual, existing citations. And so there are certainly significant issues with that. The most success I have using ChatGPT for my personal purposes is when I provide it with basically a complete manuscript. And the only thing I'm asking it to do is help it read better, improve readability, essentially. And I think that's a really nice use for people also who are not, primary English speakers as well, because you can still check it, you can still read it, and I always read over it. But most of the time, it does improve the readability. It's going to do things like a grammar checker would do, but it is quicker, and it gives some even better suggestions, and it can just structure things better. And it can also, read over an abstract or content of a paper, and it provides really nice titles. It provides really nice keywords for articles that help papers get indexed very highly. And so it can do discrete tasks like that very well, where you're asking it not to generate new knowledge necessarily, but to help with those structural aspects that help you be successful when you're writing something. I found a lot of success through that particular route. And in that case, it's not really being like a co-author or something. You might have heard that issue, because it's not really creating the knowledge. It's just in much the same way as a spell checker or a grammar checker in Word, it's helping to improve the quality of the communication itself.
The last question, Dr. Brady, and that is how the librarians, should think about what are your advice, to survive in this era of AI.
Yeah, so I think there's going to be really a lot of nice opportunities for library and information professionals. And I've actually been writing about AI in general in relation to libraries for a while. So I have a short paper on the fourth industrial revolution in libraries. I have a paper from a few years ago about AI in libraries. I think libraries are really one of the aspects where there's a lot of great potential. It is going to change things, but in many ways, it's going to improve the experience for patrons in being able to find relevant resources in order to create recommender systems that can better recommend, you've read this, so read this. And even things like automated, cataloging and those kinds of things. And those are scary as a library professional, because that sounds like, well, that's a job that I do. And so what is my role going to become? But as I've mentioned throughout my presentation, I think these technologies aren't perfect, and they won't be for a while. And so if you become an expert in how to work with them, as with you become an expert working with a new, library system, then you can really capitalize on them tremendously, because what might happen, and we've seen in libraries, at least in the United States, we have an aging librarian population, and it may be the case that certain people won't want to learn the systems, and maybe rather than learning the systems, they might retire. And so this may, in that sense, create opportunities for younger individuals who are interested in these technologies, or at the very least, it's going to create more opportunities for people who are interested in these technologies, whereas people who may have been in a role for a long time may want to transition to a different role just so that they don't have to work with this technology. And so it's going to change things. It's going to impact jobs. I don't know that it's going, in the short term at least, to dramatically take away jobs, but it's going to change how you have to work in your job. And so it may create opportunities for some, it may create disadvantages for others, it may create certain, barriers or just frustrations that may lead to some people, just saying, I'm kind of done with this job, but then there might be a new role for somebody else to move in. And so it's kind of just a matter, in my perspective, of staying on top of this technology, staying on top of these different innovations as they come. And there's going to be opportunities, and they may be even bigger opportunities than you had anticipated beforehand, because of the power of what these tools can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brady. Each one of us, would like to convey a very sincere, warm, sincere thanks to you for what an extraordinary talk that you have given it to us. And this is also to inform all our attendees, because I could see a number of, our attendees are wanting to know, sir, whether, we are going to have this presentation of yours available to them. So with your permission, Dr. Brady, maybe, can we make it available, the entire recordings, because we could see that large number of them, they're really keen enough really to, once again, listen to it, and once again, to get benefited, with these deliberations. So with your permission, we may like to, post it on the YouTube channel so that many more, gets benefited. We indeed remain much grateful to you for giving so much of time, and the efforts that you have put in being there with us. It's an early morning for you over there, and you have to be there at the workplace, and you have given enough food for thought. In India, it's a time for everyone to have dinner now, but you have, must say that you have given enough food for thought to each and every one. So while enjoying their dinner today, they are really going to think about it, this ChatGPT, and the times, wherein, they can think about everything. And as you have rightly said, one should think about more coming it as an opportunity rather than more as a challenge. But one has to really work towards it to see to it that we utilize it more as an opportunity rather than, struggling ourselves, and see that can we survive, in the current environment. So thank you so very much. On behalf of DELNET and on behalf of the organizers, Dr. Brady, this is a plaque of honor that we would like to present to you with a great sense of gratitude and admiration to you and the wonderful work, that you are doing it for the society. This people's technology that you are engaged with, that's really, really too humbling, and that makes a difference in the society. That makes, we really pray and hope that we get many more professionals like you with that kind of a mindset to work. It's like using the technology as a vehicle, to go to the destination rather than having the technology as a destination. You are a great big example, you have settled in the profession, and really feel so honored and privileged to have you, today with us on this platform, and wherein you have really shared this vast experience with us. May God bless you, and you continue, to keep on spreading and illuminating the lives of the society and the professionals. And also with this, we are going to send it across tomorrow. It's going to be sent through post, and there is a vital thing. Yes, it's all been decked out with the jewels. And we do hope it's going to take a position, somewhere on your work desk or wherever you feel like. And if we get a picture back, of this, we would truly feel, happy enough. Thank you so very much indeed. This is from each one of us, with a great sense of admiration for you and the wonderful work that you are doing. Thank you so very much indeed, Dr. Brady. It was a great honor and pleasure that we have been able to cross paths, and it was so really wonderful that you have been so gracious and kind. We are speechless. We are really speechless.
And thank you so much. It has really been a pleasure to speak to you all. I really enjoy, being able to share whatever knowledge I have and speak with you all. And it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. I would like to request Mr. Mohan may like to give some concluding words. It's over to you, Mr. Mohan. Would you like to say something? Yeah. Sorry, just give it. Yeah, it's yes.
Thank you, Professor Brady, for your wonderful and illuminating talk. In fact, it has demystified quite a few things about chatbot. And in fact, when the internet and the digital libraries came, the similar fear of librarians, what will be the future of librarians, was there. But almost similar thing is coming up. But a new category of librarians can be coming up with getting precise answer from the ChatGPT. There is something like prompt engineering. So the librarians can become prompt engineers by precisely asking questions, so that every time your question is rephrased, the ChatGPT gives a better answer. Yeah. So which means the librarian role is going to become much more complex. So like as you say, that teachers are going to become, the life of the teachers are becoming difficult to set the questions. Similarly, the librarian role is also going to change a bit. And of course, this ChatGPT has become a power shifting device. In fact, across the technology companies, you have seen the war is going. In the first round, Microsoft has won. Google has lost. Even though the Google has been the background, he has developed the transformer logic, and Microsoft back to OpenAI, they publicize this ChatGPT. And similarly, the governments are more worrying about the ChatGPT and then the outcome of this. In fact, many places, the ChatGPT has been banned. Right? So we don't know really, what is going to be there in the future. And over and above, I think slowly the digital divide is again surfacing. Like ChatGPT new version with the GPT-4, it is going to be available only for people who go for the professional service, which is going to cost $20. Yeah. So which means that we are slowly building digital divide. Are we really empowering the people or going to divide them? So there are a lot more questions are there to be brooding on. And of course, the time is the only answer. So thanks a lot for your time and giving this wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.
It has been an empowering talk. Yeah, it has been an empowering talk, and let's work together, to empower the society and empower each one of us. Thank you so very much, Professor Brady. Once again, a warm, sincere gratitude and thanks to you for being there, for your time and being there with us. And you have to set for the day, and it has been a great honor for us. And we really look forward to having many more opportunities, even to invite you here to India, and to visit India. It would be a great honor for us. So, but you have been so very gracious and kind in being there. We really remain truly grateful to you. Thank you so very much indeed. We would also like to thank all our attendees who have been able to join us from different nooks and parts of the world, making it as a global platform, deliberating on the issues which holds great significance and promise for each one of us. Let's stay connected, stay online, all the time stay connected, stay informed, and let's continue our pledge, to keep on having the knowledge sharing, among our own selves. May God bless you all. Thank you so very much for being there with us, and we really look forward to having you back again in the future, online sessions. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Brady. Thank you. And this is coming your way soon, the Indian elephant. And we do hope, that it's going to be liked by you. Thank you so much. Thank you indeed, Dr. Brady. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Indeed, a great honor and pleasure that we were able to interact with each other today. Thank you so very much. Thank you. God bless. God bless. And have a nice day. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you very much, Dr. Brady. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mohan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.